The story of the Ambbori people begins with one of the greatest feats of human navigation in history. The vast Polynesian migrations crossed the Pacific Ocean. Around the 13th century, seafaring explorers set sail from eastern Polynesia in large double-hulled canoes, known as waka, guided not by compasses or maps but by the stars, ocean currents, and the flight of seabirds. These voyagers carried with them not only supplies and tools, but also plants, animals, and a worldview that would take root in a new land. After weeks at sea, they landed on the islands now known as New Zealand, or Aotearoa, the land of the long white cloud, as named in the Ambbori language. This moment marked the beginning of a unique indigenous culture, distinct from their Polynesian ancestors yet deeply connected to the wider Pacific tradition. The Great Polynesian Migrations, the arrival of the Ambbori, was part of a larger story of Polynesian expansion, often described as the last great chapter of human exploration before the modern age. Polynesians had already settled islands such as Hawaii, Tahiti, and Rapa Nui, Easter Island, mastering the art of long distance, voyaging across some of the most challenging waters on Earth. When their waka reached, the Polynesians encountered a land very different from the tropical islands they had left behind. New Zealand's cooler climate, dense forests, and rugged mountains required adaptation. They had to learn new ways of farming, hunting, and fishing to thrive in this environment. Settlement and adaptation early. Ambbori settlements were established along the coasts in fertile river valleys, where fishing, hunting, and horticulture were most productive. Crops, such as kumara sweet potato, brought from Polynesia, became staples of agriculture, though they required innovative methods to grow in a cooler climate. The Maori also hunted native birds, including the now extinct moa, a giant flightless species that once roamed the islands. Fishing, too, became a central part of survival, with Maori developing sophisticated techniques for catching and preserving fish. They built nets, traps, and hooks carved from bone and stone, creating a deep knowledge of the sea that mirrored their ancestors' voyaging expertise. Over generations, the Maori adapted their clothing, shelter, and tools to the new environment. Cloaks woven from flax fibers replaced tropical garments, and fortified villages known as pa were constructed on hilltops, serving as both homes and defensive strongholds. Language and identity. The Ambbori developed their own language, Te Reo Ambbori, which belongs to the Eastern Polynesian branch of the Austronesian language family, closely related to Hawaiian, Tahitian, and Rapa Nui. Te Reo Ambbori carried within it the rhythms, metaphors, and poetic expressions of the Pacific, but it also evolved to describe the unique landscapes, flora, and fauna of Aotearoa. Words for native birds, mountains, rivers, and spiritual beings emerged, reflecting a worldview shaped by this new homeland. Te Reo Ambbori became more than a means of communication. It was the thread that wove together genealogy, oral tradition, and spiritual beliefs. Tribal organization. As the Ambbori population grew, society organized itself around Iwi tribes, Hopper, subtribes, and Wano, extended families. These kinship groups traced their ancestry back to the original voyaging canoes, and each Iwi maintained its own territory, leadership, and traditions. Genealogy, or weka was central to Ambbori identity. Knowing one's ancestors was not simply a matter of pride, it established one's place in the community, one's rights to land and resources, and one's role in the spiritual order. In this way, the Ambbori worldview was profoundly genealogical, connecting every person to their ancestors, their tribe, and the natural world around them. Spiritual landscape for the Ambbori. Aotearoa was not just a physical environment, but a spiritual one. Every mountain, river, and forest was imbued with Maori, a life force and inhabited by spiritual guardians. This worldview, rooted in Polynesian animism, deepened as the Ambbori settled into the landscapes of New Zealand. They believed in Atua, gods or spiritual beings who governed aspects of the natural world. Tangaroa ruled the seas. Teen was the god of forests and birds, and Rongo presided over cultivated food. By living in balance with these spiritual forces, the Maori maintained harmony with their environment. A new world emerges within a few centuries. The Maori had transformed Aotearoa from a distant outpost of Polynesia into a vibrant indigenous homeland. Distinctive traditions in art, wood carving, tattooing, tomoko, and oral storytelling emerged, creating a culture that was both rooted in Polynesian origins and uniquely embodied by the time European explorers first arrived in the 17th century. The Maori had built a complex society that was self-sufficient, spiritually rich, and deeply tied to the land. Their identity as the people of Aotearoa was already firmly established, setting the stage for the next chapter in their history, one that would involve contact, conflict, and profound change. To understand the Ambbori beyond their origins, one must step into the rhythm of their daily lives, a world where communal living, spiritual rituals, and artistic expression were woven together into a seamless fabric. The Maori way of life was not merely about survival in the rugged landscapes of Aotearoa. It was about living in harmony with the environment, honoring ancestors, and reinforcing collective identity through traditions that carried deep symbolic meaning. No. Hapa and Iwai. The social structure at the heart of Ambbori society was the Huno, extended family. The basic social unit that ensured cooperation in farming, hunting, and childcare. Several Eno combined to form a Hapa subtribe, which was both an economic and political body. A Hapa managed its own territory, often building and defending fortified villages called Pa. Above the Hapa stood the Iwai tribe, which traced its origins to a founding ancestor or one of the great voyaging canoes. Loyalty to one's Iwai was a source of identity, pride, and responsibility. While conflict between Hapa and Iwai could occur over land or resources, alliances were equally important. Cemented through intermarriage and shared ceremonies, leadership was hereditary, with chiefs or rangatira guiding their people. Chiefs were expected to embody mana, a combination of authority, spiritual power, and respect earned through wisdom, generosity, and courage. Their mana was not absolute, however. It had to be continually upheld by fulfilling responsibilities to the community. Daily subsistence, hunting, fishing, and horticulture daily life revolved around the land and sea, which were seen as gifts of the gods. Farming, fishing, and hunting provided the foundation for survival. Yet these activities were deeply ritualized. Horticulture focused primarily on kumara sweet potato, a crop brought from Polynesia but adapted to New Zealand's cooler climate. Ambbori farmers developed ingenious techniques, such as using gravel and sand to improve soil warmth and building storage pits to preserve crops over the winter. Alongside kumara, they cultivated taro, yams, and gourds. Fishing was central to life, not only for food, but also for trade between inland and coastal communities. Ambbori fishermen constructed elaborate traps and nets, sometimes stretching hundreds of meters, to capture fish and eels. Hooks were crafted from bone, shell, or wood, often carved with artistic flair. Hunting involved tracking birds and animals unique to Aotearoa. Before the extinction of the moa, these giant birds provided a major source of meat, feathers, and bones. Smaller birds like carrerwood, pigeon, and kiwi were hunted as well, though always with rituals to acknowledge the spiritual significance of taking life, housing, and village. Life Ambbori lived in kanga villages, often built near fertile land or rivers. At the center of many villages stood the Waranui meeting house, a communal building that was not only a gathering place, but also a symbolic embodiment of tribal ancestors. Its carved beams represented limbs, ribs, and a spine, transforming the house into a living body that sheltered the community. Everyday dwellings were simpler, built from timber, reeds, and flax. These homes were modest but warm, designed to withstand the damp, windy climate of New Zealand. Villages were often fortified into pa, with wooden palisades, terraces, and trenches that made them formidable in warfare. Clothing and adornment, tin place of the tropical garments of Polynesia. Ambbori clothing was crafted from Harakek New Zealand flax. Women wove intricate cloaks, skirts, and belts, decorated with feathers or dogskin. The most prestigious garments, known as kakahu, were worn by chiefs and adorned with kiwi or albatross feathers. Symbolizing high status and mana, personal adornment was equally significant. Bone, pounamu, greenstone, and shell were carved into pendants, earrings, and tools. The most iconic ornament was the heitiki, greenstone pendant representing fertility, protection, and ancestral connection. These adornments were passed down through generations, carrying spiritual power. Tamoko, the art of tattooing. One of the most striking traditions of the Ambbori is tamoko, the art of tattooing. Far beyond mere decoration, tamoko was a marker of identity, rank, and achievement. Each line and curve represented genealogy, personal history, and tribal belonging. For men, moko were often applied to the entire face, while women commonly wore mokokawi tattoos on the chin and lips. Receiving moko was a sacred ritual, accompanied by chants, prayers, and fasting. The process, carved into the skin with chisels rather than needles, was painful and lengthy, but it affirmed one's place within the community and spiritual world. Rituals and spiritual practices daily. Life was infused with rituals acknowledging the unseen forces of the world. Before planting crops, fishermen setting out to sea, or warriors departing for battle, ceremonies were performed to seek the favor of the gods. The concept of tapu's sacredness governed many aspects of life. Certain objects, people, or places were imbued with tapu, requiring careful observance of restrictions. To break tapu was to risk spiritual danger, while respecting it ensured harmony with the natural and spiritual order. Songs waiata, dances, haka, and storytelling were central to transmitting history and values. These performances were not merely entertainment, but acts of cultural preservation, linking each generation to its ancestors, a life interwoven with meaning. Every aspect of daily life, from the planting of kumara to the carving of a wera nui, the Ambbori infused practical activities with spiritual, social, and artistic meaning. Their world was one in which no action was purely functional. Everything was tied to ancestry, identity, and the balance between people and nature. This integration of work, ritual, and artistry gave Māori society resilience, creativity, and cohesion, allowing it to flourish for centuries before the arrival of Europeans. Language is more than a way to speak. It is the vessel of memory, culture, and identity. For the Inuit, their language is called Inuktitut, though across the Arctic there are many related dialects. Some Inuit in Alaska speak Inupiaq, while in Greenland the language is known as Kalaalleq. Together, these form a family of Inuit languages that stretch across thousands of kilometers, connecting communities separated by vast ice and ocean. Inuktitut is a polysynthetic language. This means that instead of using many separate words to form a sentence, it often combines multiple ideas into a single long word. For example, what might take a full English sentence can sometimes be expressed in a single Inuktitut word. This structure reflects how the Inuit view the world as something interconnected, where meaning is built from many small parts woven together. For centuries, Inuktitut was an oral language. Knowledge was passed down through storytelling, song, and conversation. There was no written script until missionaries and linguists introduced alphabets in the 18th and 19th centuries. Today, some Inuit regions use the Roman alphabet, while others, such as parts of Canada, employ a unique writing system called syllabics. These symbols, shaped like small geometric figures, were developed in the 19th century and are now a strong marker of cultural pride. Language is survival in the Arctic. It encodes centuries of observation, the names of snow types, ice conditions, animal behaviors, and winds. Inuit vocabulary includes dozens of terms for different kinds of snow and ice, because recognizing the difference could mean life or death on a hunting trip. In this way, Inuktitut is not only a language, but also a survival tool, a living map of the environment. Just as language reflects the Inuit worldview, so too does their art. Inuit art is renowned around the world for its beauty, simplicity, and spiritual depth. For generations, Inuit have carved figures from bone, ivory, antler, and stone. These carvings often depict animals, polar bears, seals, birds, or spiritual beings from legends. Each figure is not just decoration but a story, a memory, a way of honoring the natural and spiritual world. One of the most common materials for carving is soapstone, a soft green or black stone found in the Arctic. Artists shape it into animals, hunters, or spirits. A small soapstone carving may seem simple at first glance, but within its curves lies the story of a hunter's respect for the seal or a family's reliance on the caribou. Art is a way to give thanks, to remember, and to teach. Beyond carvings, Inuit also express their creativity through clothing. Traditional parkas, boots, and mittens were not only functional, but beautifully decorated with patterns of fur, beads, or stitching. Women were especially skilled in sewing, turning animal hides into garments that were both protective and artistic. Each stitch carried precision and care, and designs often indicated family identity or regional style. Music played an equally important role in Inuit culture. Perhaps the most striking example is throat singing, or katajak. Traditionally performed by women, this form of music involves two singers standing face to face, producing rhythmic, deep, layered sounds by controlling their breath and vocal cords. The result is a hypnotic blend of voices that can imitate the sounds of wind, water, or animals. Throat singing was often a game, a competition of endurance and rhythm, but it also held ceremonial and social importance. Drums were another key instrument in Inuit music. Made from stretched animal skin over a wooden frame, the drum provided rhythm for dances, songs, and rituals. Drumming ceremonies connected the community, marking important events, hunts, or spiritual gatherings. In the beating of the drum, the Inuit found both joy and connection to the unseen world of spirits. Storytelling was at the center of Inuit art. In the long Arctic nights, families gathered around the glow of the oil lamp, listening to elders tell stories. These were not merely entertainment. They were lessons about respect, bravery, and survival. Legends of Sedna, the sea goddess, or tales of trickster animals, taught children the values and warnings needed for life in the Arctic. Through language and story, Inuit culture endured without books. Preserved entirely in memory and voice, in the 20th century, Inuit art began to gain international recognition. Carvings, prints, and textiles from small Arctic communities were exhibited in galleries around the world. This recognition not only provided economic opportunities, but also gave the Inuit a powerful way to share their culture with outsiders. Today, Inuit artists continue to thrive, blending tradition with modern themes, ensuring that their art remains alive and evolving. Language and art are inseparable for the Inuit. Both are ways of telling stories, of remembering ancestors, and of maintaining identity in a changing world. Inuktitut words and Inuit carvings carry the same spirit. They are living footprints of a people who have always found beauty and resilience. For the Inuit, survival in the Arctic was never just about skill or tools. It was also about balance with the unseen world. The landscape of snow, ice, and sea was alive with spirits. Every animal, every gust of wind, every shimmering light in the night sky carried power to live in harmony with this world. The Inuit developed a rich system of beliefs and mythology, blending respect, fear, and wonder. At the center of Inuit spirituality was the idea of animism, the belief that all living beings, and even elements of nature, possess a soul or spirit. Animals were not just resources to be used. They were beings with consciousness and agency. A seal gave its life to feed a family. A caribou sacrificed itself to provide clothing and tools. Because of this, hunters were taught to treat every animal with deep respect. A careless act, or a lack of gratitude, could offend the spirit of the animal and bring misfortune on the entire community. One of the most powerful figures in Inuit mythology is Sedna, the sea goddess. Sedna is said to live at the bottom of the ocean, where she controls all marine animals. Legends about Sedna vary, but most tell a tragic story. In one version, Sedna was a young woman whose father forced her into marriage with a man who turned out to be a bird spirit. When she cried for help, her father tried to rescue her by boat, but as they fled, a storm arose. In desperation, her father threw her into the sea. When she clung to the boat, he cut off her fingers to save himself. As Sedna sank to the ocean floor, her severed fingers transformed into seals, walrus, and whales, the animals upon which the Inuit depend. From that moment on, Sedna ruled the undersea world. Hunters must honor her with rituals, songs, and taboos, or else she might withhold the animals and bring starvation. This story is not only myth, but also moral guidance. It teaches that human survival is tied to respect for the forces of nature, and that greed or cruelty can bring disaster. Sedna embodies both generosity and wrath, reminding the Inuit that the ocean provides, but must never be taken for granted. Another central figure in Inuit spirituality was the Angakuk, or shaman. The Angakuk acted as healer, spiritual guide, and mediator between humans and the spirit world. When illness struck, or when hunting failed, it was the shaman who entered trance states through drumming and chanting, traveling in spirit to seek answers. They might negotiate with Sedna, calm angry souls, or retrieve lost spirits of the sick. The Angakuk was respected but also feared, for they dealt with powers beyond ordinary human reach. Inuit mythology is filled with countless other beings and stories. One famous tale is that of the sun and the moon. According to legend, the sun is a sister and the moon her brother. Long ago, the moon chased his sister across the sky, and she fled, carrying a torch that became the sunlight. Their eternal chase explains why the sun and moon move as they do, and why day follows night. Such stories provided the Inuit not only with explanations for natural phenomena, but also with moral lessons about family, boundaries, and the consequences of human actions. Spirits of animals and the land were everywhere. The northern lights, or aurora borealis, were sometimes believed to be the spirits of the dead playing games in the sky. Whistling at the lights was said to invite them closer, but also risk them coming to take you away. The landscape itself was alive with invisible presences, reminding people to act with caution, humility, and reverence. Taboos and rituals shaped daily behavior. Certain animals had to be hunted in specific ways, and their remains treated properly. After a seal was caught, fresh water might be poured into its mouth, symbolically quenching its thirst as a gesture of respect. Women had to follow strict rules after childbirth, and hunters observed rituals before leaving for the ice. These practices ensured harmony between humans and the spirit world, reinforcing the belief that survival was a partnership, not a conquest. Even laughter and play carried spiritual significance. Storytelling, songs, and games were not merely entertainment. They were ways to honor the spirits, strengthen community, and teach children how to live responsibly. Through myth, the Inuit taught values of respect, generosity, and endurance, values as essential as food and shelter in the Arctic today. Many Inuit identify as Christian, the result of centuries of missionary influence. Churches stand in Arctic towns, and biblical stories are told alongside ancient legends. Yet Inuit mythology has not disappeared. Sedna still lives in the imagination. Throat singing, drum dances, and traditional rituals continue, blending old beliefs with modern life. For many Inuit, spirituality is not about choosing between traditions, but about weaving them together, just as their ancestors wove survival from the threads of ice and spirit. The mythology of the Inuit is more than folklore. It is a worldview, a reminder that life in the Arctic has always been fragile. It's dependent on respect, balance, and humility before forces greater than ourselves. In every story of Sedna, every whisper of the northern lights, we glimpse the deep wisdom of a people who learned to thrive where few could survive. When the long Arctic night sets in and the winds howl outside, Inuit families have always gathered around the gentle flame of the kullik, the oil lamp. In this circle of warmth and shadows, stories come alive. Storytelling is not just entertainment for the Inuit. It is education, spiritual practice, and cultural preservation. Through legends, each generation learns who they are, what they value, and how to survive in harmony with the world around them. Perhaps the most famous Inuit legend is the story of Sedna, the sea goddess. Though we spoke of her in mythology, the full tale takes many forms. In some versions, Sedna was a young woman who refused all suitors, angering her father. In others, she married a mysterious stranger who turned out to be a spirit in disguise. Betrayed, frightened, and abandoned, Sedna's tragic fall into the sea transformed her into a goddess of immense power. From her fingers sprang seals, walrus, and whales, and to this day hunters must respect her or risk famine. Elders often told this story before hunting trips, reminding everyone that success was never guaranteed and always dependent on humility for the spirits. Another widely told legend is the story of the sun and the moon. According to Inuit tradition, the sun is a sister named Melina, and the moon is her brother, Aningan. Long ago, they lived together in the same house. One night, Aningan attacked his sister. Horrified, Melina fled, carrying a torch that became the blazing sun. Aningan followed with his own torch, becoming the moon. To this day, he chases her across the sky but never catches her. This story explains the cycles of day and night, but it also carries deeper meaning about the balance of male and female, light and darkness, pursuit and escape. Parents told this tale to remind children about boundaries and respect. The Inuit also told stories about tricksters and shapeshifters, beings who blurred the line between human and animal. One such figure is Kiviak, a legendary hero whose adventures appear in many variations. Kiviak is often described as a great wanderer, traveling by kayak across endless seas and facing supernatural challenges. In one story, he battles giant animals and spirit creatures. In another, he is guided by animals who save him from danger. Through Kiviak's journeys, Inuit listeners learn that bravery, cleverness, and respect for nature are essential qualities for survival. Another important set of stories concerns the Northern Lights, or Aurora Borealis. For the Inuit, these shimmering curtains of green and red were not merely atmospheric phenomena. In some communities, they were said to be the spirits of ancestors playing ball with a walrus skull in the sky. In others, they were spirits guiding the dead to the afterlife. Children were warned never to whistle at the lights or they might swoop down and take you away. The Northern Lights carried both beauty and danger, reflecting the duality of Arctic life itself. Stories were not only about gods and heroes. Many Inuit tales were practical lessons disguised as legends. For example, some stories warned children not to wander too far from camp, describing monsters or spirit creatures that would snatch disobedient youngsters. Others explained why certain animals behaved as they did, why the raven was black, why the fox was clever, or why the seal lived in the water. These tales were mnemonic devices, teaching survival skills in a form children could remember. Even humor had a place in Inuit storytelling. Some tales are filled with absurd characters, awkward situations, or mischievous animals who get into trouble. These stories allowed laughter in the long, dark winter and reminded listeners that joy, too, is a form of resilience. Humor helped balance fear and hardship, reinforcing the value of community bonds. What makes Inuit legends unique is that they are living stories. They were never frozen in a single form, but adapted as they were retold. Each storyteller added their own voice, emphasizing different lessons depending on the audience or situation. A tale told to children might focus on morals, while the same tale told to hunters might highlight respect for animals. This flexibility ensured the stories stayed relevant, generation after generation. Today, Inuit storytellers continue this tradition, blending oral narratives with modern mediums such as books, films, and performances. Legends of Sedna, Kiviak, and the Northern Lights are taught in schools and celebrated in festivals. They are not relics of the past, but threads woven into modern Inuit identity. Inuit legends and stories remind us that even in the most desolate landscapes, the human imagination thrives. These tales are maps of morality, memory, and meaning. They show how the Inuit turned the silence of the Arctic night into a chorus of voices, voices that continue to echo across ice and time. The Inuit people are often imagined only in the past, hunters in fur clothing, living in igloos surrounded by snow and silence. But the Inuit are not just a chapter in history. They are a vibrant people of today, balancing tradition with the challenges of the modern world. From the icy coasts of Greenland to the northernmost villages of Canada and Alaska, Inuit communities continue to evolve. Adapting their way of life without losing sight of their roots, modern Inuit life is shaped by both continuity and change. Many still live in small Arctic towns and settlements, surrounded by the same landscapes their ancestors knew. Snowmobiles have largely replaced dog sleds. Rifles often replace harpoons. And satellite phones connect hunters, even on the ice. Yet, the essence of survival remains the same: respect for the land, reliance on community, and resilience in the face of harsh conditions. Hunting, fishing, and gathering are still central, not only for food, but also for identity. A seal hunt, for instance, is not just about nutrition. It is a reaffirmation of cultural knowledge. Passed from elders to youth, housing has also changed. Most Inuit families now live in wooden or prefabricated houses rather than igloos. Electricity and the internet have reached even remote villages, bringing both new opportunities and new challenges. Young people today may grow up playing video games and watching TikTok, but they also learn how to skin a seal or navigate the sea ice from their grandparents. This coexistence of global modernity and ancient tradition is what defines contemporary Inuit life. Language is another key marker of identity. In Canada, many Inuit speak Inuktitut, and in Greenland, the national language is Kalaalleq. Efforts to preserve and teach these languages are central to Inuit cultural survival. Schools, media, and literature increasingly use Indigenous languages, allowing younger generations to grow up bilingual, speaking both the tongue of their ancestors and global languages like English or Danish. In this way, Inuit communities resist cultural erasure while engaging with the wider world. Education and governance have also undergone transformation. In Canada, the territory of Nunavut was created in 1999, giving Inuit people significant political autonomy. Today, Inuit leaders play active roles in government, advocating for their people and shaping policies that reflect Indigenous perspectives. Issues like climate change, housing shortages, and mental health are pressing concerns, and Inuit voices are at the forefront of seeking solutions. Climate change is perhaps the greatest challenge facing Inuit communities today. The Arctic is warming at more than twice the global average, melting sea ice and altering animal migration patterns. For Inuit hunters, this means greater danger on thinning ice and less predictable access to traditional food sources. For coastal villages, it means erosion, flooding, and in some cases, relocation. Inuit elders who carry generations of ecological knowledge now work with scientists to track these changes. Their observations, rooted in centuries of survival, are invaluable in understanding the planet's shifting climate. At the same time, modern Inuit are artists, filmmakers, musicians, and storytellers, sharing their culture with the world. Inuit throat singing, once banned by missionaries, has been revived and celebrated internationally. Inuit art, from soapstone carvings to contemporary paintings, is exhibited in major museums. Filmmakers such as Zacharias Canuck, director of Aotearoa, The Fast Runner, have brought Inuit legends to the global stage, using cinema as a modern form of storytelling. Yet modern life also brings struggles. Many Inuit communities face high rates of unemployment, limited healthcare access, social issues such as substance abuse, and youth suicide. These challenges are rooted in historical trauma, including forced relocations, residential schools, and decades of cultural suppression. Healing is ongoing, led by Inuit themselves, who reclaim pride, identity, and agency in shaping their future. Despite these difficulties, Inuit resilience is unmistakable. Community remains the heart of life. When a hunter shares a successful catch, the food is distributed widely, ensuring no family goes hungry. Ceremonies, feasts, and storytelling circles continue to strengthen bonds, In every village, elders are revered as keepers of wisdom, while children are celebrated as the promise of continuity. Inuit. Life today is not about choosing between tradition and modernity. It is about weaving them together, just as their ancestors wove survival from fur, bone, and stone. A young Inuit may study at a university in Ottawa or Copenhagen, but they may also return home to join a seal hunt or a drum dance. Both experiences shape their identity. Both are part of being Inuit. The story of the Inuit is still being written. It is a story of survival against all odds, of adaptation in the face of relentless change, and of a culture that refuses to disappear. In the icy winds of the Arctic, in the songs of throat singers, in the flicker of the northern lights, the Inuit spirit endures, carrying ancient wisdom into the future. The story of the Inuit is more than the story of a single people. It is the story of humanity's resilience, creativity, and spirit of survival. For thousands of years, the Inuit thrived in one of the harshest places on Earth, the Arctic, a land of ice, shadow, and fragile beauty. Their knowledge of the land, their deep respect for animals, and their ability to transform hardship into culture made them as masters of survival where others could not endure. Through this journey, we have seen the many faces of Inuit life, from their origins as skilled hunters and navigators, to the mythology of Sedna, the sea goddess, in the dazzling legends of the Northern Lights, to the art music, in storytelling that gave them identity, and finally, to their ongoing struggle and triumph in today's modern world. What stands out above all is their adaptability. Tools have changed from harpoons to rifles, from dog sleds to snowmobiles, but the Inuit spirit has remained constant. It is a spirit that values sharing over selfishness, respect over conquest, and harmony over dominance. In a world where climate change and modern pressures threaten indigenous cultures everywhere, the Inuit remind us that survival is not just about strength, but about wisdom. Their legends continue to echo under the dancing lights of the aurora. Their songs, once silenced, now resonate on global stages. Their young people carry both smartphones and the memories of their elders, bridging to worlds with dignity. The Inuit story tells us that tradition and modernity need not be enemies. They can be woven together just like threads in a sealskin parka, and perhaps that is the greatest lesson the Inuit offer the world. Survival is not just physical, but cultural, spiritual, and collective. The Arctic may seem distant, but its fate is tied to all of ours. As the ice melts and the planet warms, Inuit voices are among the first to warn us of what is coming. To listen to them is to listen to the earth itself. So, as we close this chapter of our journey, remember, the Inuit are not relics of the past. They are living, breathing communities, writing new stories every day, stories of struggle, resilience, and hope. Their footprints are not frozen in history. They continue across the ice, guiding future generations. If this story moved you, if it opened your eyes to a culture both ancient and alive, then join us as we continue to explore the peoples of the world. This is just the beginning. From the Arctic tundra to the Amazon rainforest, from desert nomads to ocean voyagers, countless indigenous voices are waiting to be heard. This was the story of the Inuit people of the Arctic, keepers of light in the land of darkness. Follow us, and together we'll journey deeper into the footprints of humanity's roots.